Yo. So this first part will be unscripted. There'll be a scripted part later. For now, I just wanna say hi and just talk about say the project, cause a lot has happened in Discord lately, and I need to update everyone on YouTube about it. So you might be wondering about the title, and basically, well, like I said, a lot has happened. When I first made this project, it was during the heyday of when everyone was kind of making their own RWBY rewrite. I already mentioned them, you know what they are. And now that Volume 7's out, people are, I think back when Volume 6 came out, the whole fandom was very divided. With Volume 7, where it's pretty okay so far, I think everyone just sort of resigned themselves to the decision whether they want to continue watching RWBY or not. And for me, my investment has sort of, well, petered out. Where I watch it, but sort of my investment in it is kind of gone. And now, what I felt about wanting to reboot RWBY and all this, they reached a point where, I felt that my sense of sentimentality regarding RWBY, regarding Monty, I need to take a look at it a second time to really evaluate my intentions with it, which I'll go over in the actual scripted part of this video. But basically, we're taking a different direction with this, which may not be something you want to hear, because, well, I did plan to update 2 videos in between the last one and this one. There was supposed to be 2 videos. One of them was to kind of show what the new reboot stuff info was about to be, and the second was sort of like a letter to the fandom regarding basically how all of this conflict in the fandom, a lot has happened between Volume 7, well, between me making the project and Volume 7, where I just sort of felt that all this conflict regarding what to do with RWBY, how to take it, and the sort of antagonistic position that we put ourselves in just by saying you want to make a RWBY rewrite. It was all just very tiring. It just led to a lot of drama that wasn't really needed when I just wanted to, make some cool RWBY stuff. And I felt that it was unhealthy for the project. So I decided to step back, take a new direction, and just enjoy RWBY for what it could give me. If I just put aside all this huge money stuff and all that, just appreciate what he contributed and take what I can from what Rooster Teeth is making of it, really just simplifies my view of things. And basically, Monty made something good. He made something great. And I want to continue appreciating it in whatever form it may be. I mean, even in something like the Silver trailers, it's not RWBY per se, but it still has that RWBY feel, and it was made because of RWBY, and I can appreciate it because of that. And which leads to the main topic of the video. So all I want to say is just sit tight and sit tight, and I hope you're prepared and on board with where we're going. Basically, we're moving forward with trying to make what Ruby Cherish was supposed to be into an original work, where for legal reasons, for productivity reasons, which I'll explain, but that's where we're at. I know after basically radio silence for the past few months, that's probably not what you wanted to hear. You want to see more designs, more stuff, which I will show, but this is the conclusion we've reached, and I'll explain why. The world Monty created has ignited the imaginations of thousands from all around the world. I would argue that you would know something carried that same creative fire as RWBY did, if you saw it. For me, that would be Mark Zhang and Dylan Gu's work. Whether RWBY related or not, they represent the peak that this fandom has achieved. It feels like RWBY, even though it's not RWBY. That alone is a very interesting and frustrating thought to grapple with. What does it mean to reboot RWBY? What would it look like? Does it follow canon as much as possible, or does it set up to new territories? At which point does it stop becoming RWBY? There are many people out there who love everything about canon RWBY, within my own server even. Why break something if it isn't broken? How much do we keep? But I, along with the mods that are helping me with this project, asked ourselves a question. Was the RWBY that Monty started making the best version of what he could have made? That argument alone would set in motion a change that had huge implications for the project. RWBY was like nothing else before it when it first came out in 2013. 3D CG, action, anime style works was not a huge thing. 2D was still the only appealing option back then for anime, which allowed RWBY to flourish in its own turf. But now, many others have taken the stage and have even overtaken RWBY. The same can be said for its story, its plot, and basically hindsight is 2020. If Monty knew what he knew back then, would he have made the same RWBY? Should we be happy with just adapting RWBY pretty much as is, with just some tweaks and polish here and there to make sure everything runs properly? Or should we try and shoot for something higher than that? These were the initial designs for Team RWBY that I made. Very close to canon. I was about to approve these designs, but something didn't feel right. It felt like I wasn't doing enough. If someone saw these designs, would they really believe this was a reboot? They'd say they're tweaks of the Volume 1 designs, sure. Nothing wrong with that. They're absolutely iconic. But we asked ourselves, is that the message we want to send? That all we should do, and all that this is good for, is a few simple edits in the same plot, the same beacon, the same veil? If it was Monty here, looking at his old work right now, with all of this cool new stuff today at his fingertips, all the lessons he learned from his past work, yet still staying true to himself, what would he make? What would RWBY 5-10 years from his original inception look like today? Honestly, I don't know. But I ask myself, what would carry that same spirit, that same over-the-top action, that same hopeful tone, but was something that was more than just a nostalgia trip for the old fans? This was the question that we struggled with, and we don't think that we can make everyone happy with our decision. But we think that to move forward is to aim high, to keep striving for the best you can do, to improve, all the while appreciating the past and carrying its spirit and ideals forward. But at the end of the day, it has to feel like RWBY. I'll leave you to be the judge of that. But for now, this is the conclusion I've reached, and here are its results.
Remnant. My home. My everything. Ruby Rose, Huntress Extraordinaire! It's a new day in Vale, guys. Let's go!
Who do you think you're talking to? Waishni. A pleasure, I guess. If you think I managed to enter Beacon by my name alone, then you are painfully mistaken.
Pardon me for the intrusion. Blake. Just Blake. I appreciate your hospitality. This is the life I've chosen, if you could call it a choice.
Ha! Thought I'd find you guys here. Yang Xiaolong, here to add a little spark into your boring life. I'm a one-girl army, party of one. I'm everything you'd want, really.
What does it mean to keep moving forward? What does it mean to honor someone's legacy? Ever since Monty's death, and ever since I started the unofficial RWBY Reboot, this question has always been on my mind. I was just some random person on the internet, halfway across the world. It came to a point where I had had enough. My frustrations were screaming to be let out, so I created this project, the unofficial RWBY Reboot. Thank you, RWBY. Thank you for handling the insurmountable pressure that is carrying on Monty's project after his passing. Mistakes should be pointed out, and critique will always come. And it is on you to listen to them, for the betterment of your craft and your responsibility as a creator. But I thank you for taking the full force of a large portion of the fandom's wrath for nearly the past 5 years. The world was simpler when Monty was alive. Though there were flaws, many flaws, since the beginning, we just had too much fun to dwell on them. The weight of someone's death burdening our every choice and viewing experience was the last thing on our minds. I missed the big picture. I wanted to fix the world, the character arcs, the story. I wanted to glue the broken pieces back together. I thought that would make me happy. I thought that would save RWBY. I was wrong. Because I was still bitter. I was still sad for what could have been. I still felt that sense of loss every time I rewatch any of the volumes. I still felt helpless that what I made would never be canon. Watching RWBY was some of the most joy I felt experiencing any story in my life. I remember watching the production diaries. I was so excited just to see some graphics upgrades. I was just so happy to be a RWBY fan. But Monty's death killed me. All hope I had turned into suspicion and doubt. I didn't believe Rooster Teeth would ever make me love RWBY the way I first did, and I never believed it since. I looked for it in other rewrites, I looked for it in fan art, and finally, I tried to look for it in my own reboot. I thought that would finally make me happy, but I wasn't. I was no happier than the day I learned Monty died. His death still hung over me and every decision I made with the project, what he would have wanted, how he would have done it. Controversy after controversy has struck Rooster Teeth, and one half of the fandom is desperately trying to defend their actions while the other half wants it all to burn down. It's plain insanity. That's when I knew that if I continued doing this reboot the way I saw it, I wouldn't be fixing any of this. If anything, I'd make it worse, divide the fandom further. I'd have fixed Monty's story, but the community would still be a miserable hellhole. I definitely knew that this wasn't what Monty's vision would be. This is what RWBY was about. It's about us creating something that speaks to us and to others. It's about discovering ourselves and expressing it. It's about working together for a better tomorrow. It's about loss and not letting it define you, but to let it open a path where you can grow from it, become stronger, and finally move on from that fateful day 5 years ago. I didn't want to reboot RWBY to make something better. I wanted to reboot it because I wanted to love RWBY again. I wanted to feel that joy again. But until I knew what Monty's death did to me, to Rooster Teeth, to the story itself, and to all of us, I would never feel it again, no matter what I had planned to do. This community, as a collective, has never had a chance to heal, to move on. That is why everyone still expects the world from Rooster Teeth. That's why for every person who's excited about watching Volume 7, Another person is reluctantly enjoying it, dreading that they'll be disappointed again. Another person is too jaded or disgusted by their community to watch it. And another person just doesn't even care anymore. I'm sorry if you blame Rooster Teeth for the direction RWBY has taken. I can't blame you for how you feel, because I felt the exact same way, and in some ways I still do. But there came a point for me where I have had enough of being miserable. Does RWBY belong to Monty or Rooster Teeth or its fans? I don't care about the semantics, because Monty made it and he welcomed everyone to be a part of it, and it made him happy and fulfilled knowing that it made us happy and it brought us joy. I know that much, and I still believe RWBY can bring us joy. We'll have our differences still, but why should that be the way the conversation always starts? Monty may have some idea about what RWBY would end up, but he was always welcoming others to mold it into something that was more than just himself. 5 years from his death, it has still inspired and captured the imaginations of new people, new generations. That is a miracle. Monty has been gone for nearly 5 years now. Rooster Teeth has chosen to continue his legacy. Years from now, what do you want to remember RWBY as? I want a world where RWBY was remembered as Monty's final love letter to the world. I want RWBY to be remembered 10, 20 years from now as something more. Something that endured the hardship of its creator's death. Something that stayed true to his words and ideals. Something we'd be proud of. I don't want to leave RWBY saying it was a lost cause. I want to leave RWBY saying it left a lasting impact on me, on the world for the better. More than anything, Monty wanted to make something that would transcend himself, a piece of his soul that would outlive him and help create a slightly better world than when he left it. Something that you would remember him by and not feel grief or remorse, but joy and gratitude. Alright, so some of you may not understand what's happening here, so I'll explain in detail. The short of it is, due to major productivity issues for the past few months, adherence to RWBY canon causing a major damper on what we want to do, as well as anticipating possible legal issues down the line with Rooster Teeth, the team and I are looking to shift this project from a RWBY-inspired work that reboots RWBY for all the same characters into a RWBY-inspired but original work. So, of course, if you're the YouTube crowd, I need to get you up to speed. A lot of things has been going on behind the scenes with the contributors, the mods and me, and there are several factors that led to this outcome. Number one was the team had nothing to do, because a lot of them felt like they were waiting around. Obviously, I was new to this, we're all new to this, and it was all a learning experience trying to make this sort of thing happen. And I believe we were too ambitious with it. We made a lot of mistakes, a lot of hiccups in production, where basically I more or less took up all the work on myself because I had a certain vision of how to take it, but that kind of left everyone with nothing to do, which is bad, because I made this project thinking that I was going to do it myself, not expecting a community to pop up around what I wanted to do. So I never really adapted out of that solo mindset, which held everyone back, which led to the project becoming stagnant, admittedly. A lot of them had to wait for me in regards to videos, content. We wanted to be more regular with it, but there was always something in production that kind of held us back, which leads me to the next point. Number two, the team had too much to work with. So as you know, we're trying to reboot RWBY, but this is RWBY we're talking about. RWBY is a huge world that Monty made with a lot of characters and everything like that. Big world. And we thought we could expand it, fill in the blanks, because the map is huge, but we don't really know what's happening yet, so it's natural to try to fill in the blanks, add lore, add all of that, and of course, add original characters, which was inevitable. But in the end, that became detrimental because we sort of ended up in the same spot that Rooster Teeth was, where you're trying to balance all of this stuff, but you don't have the resources nor the time to be able to do so. I made this project because I thought of like this sort of hypothetical situation where the fan base made something of RWBY that could address all that we wanted with it. And it seemed that when you think about it realistically, if Rooster Teeth wasn't able to do it, then what about us? We were doing this for free. I mean, yes, some decisions could be better, but there was still the problem of trying to address everything at once. So there are too many moving parts. The lore was being made more, and new characters kept being made faster than we could actually address them. Because every time something new came up, we had to implement them into the actual story, which slowed things down. They all piled on each other like a traffic jam, basically. That's basically what happened, and it caused things to become congested. Because, I wanted initially for this to be a community project, to have everyone give their say, to give their opinions. But what that led to, unfortunately, was because everyone had a voice, that led to a lot of clutter. So I started this very hands-off approach, which I now realize that I have to be a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more firm with what I wanted, because the community of RWBY Cherish formed because of that one video. Basically, that one video carried everything. And you guys thought I had some kind of vision with it, and which was what I should have enforced, instead of, not that I shouldn't have listened to all those ideas, but more like there needed to be some sort of point where I say, it's enough, let's move forward, or else we have too much to work with. I didn't do that. That was my mistake. And that caused problems. Which leads us into point 3, RWBY itself, where, Volume 7 came out, a lot of new characters, a lot of new information. That, of course, even though it is a reboot, we had to feel obligated to try and implement them. And the fact that we have to do that every year without fail until RWBY ends, it was not good production-wise. It was just not a healthy thing to try to do, where basically we couldn't move until next year Rooster Teeth makes something. There's bound to be something that will throw a spanner into the works and change things, where we have to feel like we kind of have to do it to some extent. So the fact that our entire project hinged on random information that Rooster Teeth could put out every year, that every year something could happen that could just make us try to steer the direction of the project towards something, or gives us some idea to change it. It's not healthy for the production. It sort of stifled what we wanted to do, our vision and all that. So that was another problem. And really, regarding all these problems, I can't say they could have been avoided. I was new to this like everyone else. And I'm sure all of you watching, you had high hopes for me. But really, these are not problems that we really could have foreseen to some extent, but really wouldn't have known until they happened, regarding the congestion, regarding having to abide by the canon. With just enough flexibility, we thought that if we had enough flexibility, that would be fine, that we could just steer as much into our direction as possible. But the more it went on, the more it became clear that they came into conflict trying to respect the canon, or at least what Monty made, and then try to implement them. Because, if even if Monty only made the trailers and volume 1 and 2, and we're trying to follow that mostly, we do know that he made stuff like the Maidens. He probably made stuff in this volume and future volumes that we know he made, stuff that they mentioned before that he made before, but they couldn't implement into the early volumes, stuff like that. So really, a lot of these complicated issues about trying to figure out which thing did Monty make, which didn't he. It really held us back in terms of, one, we couldn't really do what we wanted to do, and two, it felt like it was missing the point of what we were trying to do of honoring what Monty did, because it's a lot of picking up details, but I felt like we may have missed, well, probably missed the whole spirit of it, which is why Monty made RWBY and why he wanted us to enjoy it, was to create. He was a creator, and as a creator myself, I understand that to just want people to, yes, enjoy your world, but then to really branch out and carry that spark and influence the world in your own way. And yeah, rebooting RWBY would have scratched that itch that we had regarding what we felt should have happened. But I think we've reached a point where it became, a lot of the server half the time, they're always talking about Monty's legacy, Monty's intention. There was stuff that I brought up too, and it really became, I'll admit, it became a burden at points, because it feels like, yeah, we want to do that, but are we really getting the point of moving forward, about creating, about letting that creative passion drive us like it did for Monty, and spreading it to others? I felt we missed that point. I felt that in order to, if I had to choose between just making something inspired in general from Monty's example, and compared to making something that precisely followed everything that he wished on like a detailed sort of level, like, oh, he wanted John to be this way, he wanted Pyrrha to be this way, he wanted this plot point to happen. I felt that was missing the point. The spirit of what he wanted was basically to carry that creative passion and create something great, something that you feel invested in at the end of the day. So that was sort of the conclusion we reached. And of course, there was the legal issues as well, because the reboot thing, it rubs people the wrong way, obviously. You think you can make something better. I mean, it is what it sounds like. And so why not make something like an AU, an alternate universe, kind of like what Dishwasher does with RWBY 3.0. We did try, but to an extent that wasn't working either. From the beginning, we were aware that there could have been legal issues, so we're prepared for that outcome, and none has happened yet, obviously, but we felt that given the state of RWBY and Rooster Teeth currently, it was just not a safe place to be, to make a project of this type with the state of the fandom, with the state of Rooster Teeth. It just didn't seem safe for the project, and for all the work that we've made, we didn't want it to all come crashing down because some legal issue that may or may not happen, but that's weighed in with all the other things that we had to consider as well, which is why we have considered making it into an original work. And by original, I mean something like, I bring up again the Silver Trailers by Mark Zhang, If you haven't watched them, you should. Where, if you notice, when he first started the Silver trailer, he had Simon, Magistus, the guy with the dust jacket. He fought a bunch of White Fang dudes with White Fang models. And then he made Charcoal. And then Charcoal, he was fighting a bunch of robots, original robot designs. So, and then Regalia has an entirely original enemy faction, the robots is one. And then there's this Atlas looking chick who fought with ice and all that. But it wasn't Atlas, it was Pandora, he called it. So I could sense that from Silver to Regalia, I think Mark had the same idea where he was using kind of assets from RWBY itself, the White Fang. But as he moved on, he felt that he needed to branch out, make it stand out on its own, independently of RWBY, at least in terms of the designs, terms, names, because he changed this obviously Atlas-looking faction to Pandora. And I was seeing where he was going with it. I support it. I was on board because yeah, it would be nice if they were White Fang and that was Atlas, but he's not Rooster Teeth. He can only be his own person. So it's best that he make the work entirely his own as well. Make his own assets to use instead of depending on RWBY for it, which is similar to what the mindset that we have reached as well, where it has the feel of RWBY, the essence of it, as much as we can afford, but the characters are different, the setting is different, even. It kind of looks, like Remnant, but I'm pretty sure it isn't. And the fandom loved it, after all. Even though it is becoming more and more original, but whether this character did this, whether this is similar to RWBY or not, whether they shared this or not. At first, yeah, it seemed right to try to correct these sort of things, internal consistency and all that. For RWBY rewrite, that makes sense. But for a work that is trying to be as creative as possible, you want to capture the spirit more, which is something I've said many times already. What do I intend to do with all this? Or what do we intend to do? Obviously, this was discouraging for a lot of us, the server. And I'm sure for you as you're hearing this. And trust me, I was the least excited among all of us when I realized this was a choice I had to make for the project, for everyone in the server, for all of you watching right now. I made this project like 6 months ago, wanting to honor Monty and his world. I wanted to repay him for how much he changed in my life by contributing straight to the source, which is RWBY. Back then, I didn't want to make my original work. My full-time job is a webtoon artist, making my own stuff. I felt I'm good on that front. Let me give back to RWBY instead of my own original world. Makes sense to me at the time. So I once saw the works of people influenced by Monty, like Dylan Gu, like Mark Zhang with Silver, making their own works that are clearly inspired by Monty. And part of me felt like, back then, it felt like a waste. Like, what a waste. I don't mean to belittle their work, but what my mind was in at that time was, I looked at it and I felt, if only this was RWBY, They evoked so much of Monty's creative energy in their work. I wish that was RWBY. And that was what I tried to do here. So behind the scenes, when the team was clearly going to this direction of, we have to consider making this original for all the reasons stated, I was not happy. I was opposed to it, actually. I didn't want to budge on it. Because, I'm sure you understand, I started this for RWBY. I'm in this for RWBY. What would be the point of this RWBY reboot if it was anything else. So I was willing to compromise everyone's productivity to continue doing so, which led to problems, of course. But I realized I was not the only person who was working on this. Many others were who were excited for it, and they reached a point where they couldn't move further. I could have continued being stubborn, holding the writers back, adding more lore, more characters that we probably, to be realistic, would never be able to see, even though we can have fun making them. Or I could try to give us a chance to try making actual content for real before this all just burns out. Between the last 6 months and now, I really have nothing to show for all of this, except for that first video. And that was the big sign that we were doing something wrong, despite our ideals being so. I believed in them. I believed in what we were doing with RWBY, but the results weren't there. So it sucks. It really does suck. But something had to be done, or else, this channel would, the team would fall apart. This channel would, kind of slowly die off because we just couldn't move forward. So I told everyone the plan. I told everyone, look, those of you on the team, if this is the route we're going to go, let's hear what you have. All of us, let's make proposals, following what Mark did with Silver as the baseline. Let's see what we make. Propose an original premise with your own characters and all that, and then let everyone vote for it. I made this video so that you all can vote as well, not just the Discord people, but everyone of you watching on YouTube, to decide if we were going to go original, if this was some of the choice we had to make, what should we make, right? So that was what I told everyone to do about 2 weeks ago. We took Mark Silver as a baseline, just so that they could understand what was happening, where it would look and feel like RWBY, and people who like RWBY like it as well, but it was its own thing. As you can see with how Mark has been trying to make it, it's slowly becoming its own thing, where it stands out on its own. Where it has its own main characters, it has its own factions, it slowly has its own identity. That was what we wanted to do. But obviously, even back then, when I watched the Silver trailers and everything Mark did for the first time, I felt, if only this was RWBY. Back then, I didn't see the point of pretending to be RWBY when I could just reboot it and make it actually RWBY, at least in my head. But, this is where we are. So we started making our proposals around the 15th of the month, December. I told them that by Christmas, which was a few days ago, that I wanted to see these proposals. To be honest, back then when I told them to do it, I didn't really feel confident about it. It felt, let's just try it out, see what happens. But I wasn't really sure that I was confident in really anything would come out of it. But slowly, when we were all making our proposals, and I was making my own too, along with my mod team, everyone else, I was slowly starting to see what they were going for. What Mark was trying to do with Silver, what Dylan Gu was doing with all his animations. I was slowly starting to understand why they do what they do. Why they're not just doing some RWBY fan work, right? Because I was making my own proposal to propose. I was like, I'll just make whatever, kind of make it feel like RWBY, all that, see if it works. But the more I worked on it, because of that creative freedom, I felt very invested, There is a lot of power in the sense, in knowing that it's your own world. That sense, and I bet, I'm willing to bet it's that same feeling that Monty felt. that same excitement when he was starting to build his own world. And I was slowly starting to see it too, you know, where you're free to interpret the characters however you want, without the fandom, without rooster without preconceived ideas of how they should act, or how Monty would have wanted them to act. You get to decide, but you can evoke the same spirit of RWBY, but with an entirely different set of characters, like what Mark did. And slowly, I was starting to see how this could actually work, you know, where I was wholly opposed to it before. So, in a sense, I unwittingly convinced myself, which is why I'm trying to talk to you now, to try to convince you about it as well. You know, because now I did have the easy way out where I had to evoke the spirit of RWBY, is, you know, this essence, just by rewriting RWBY characters. I had to make something of my own, and I have to try to convince people by its own merits. You understand? It's a new mindset to think about, where you had to work with your own characters that you are invested in, but somehow they sort of evoke that same sense of wonderment, that same sort of investment, that same sort of unfiltered creative passion that what made us love RWBY. And working on my own idea, it slowly dawned on me that was the case. And slowly, I became convinced that this is probably the way for us to move forward. After all these months since I made that first video, too many times I know where, in my stubbornness to try to mimic RWBY, to try to accommodate it, to try to worry about it over the details of what Monty wanted and all that, I held my own self back. I held my own ideas back. I stifled my creativity, which I think is probably the opposite of what Monty would have wanted for anyone to do with their own work, whatever they did. So in a sense, I totally missed the point. In trying to follow the details of what Monty would have wanted, I missed the point of what he actually wanted us to do, which is to be creative. And it was humbling. It made me a little bit, well, a little bit sad to acknowledge that too, because you guys know I love RWBY. And I know you all love it too. You know, we had high hopes for it. We were so invested in it, only for everything to get cut short with Monty's death, you know. And I felt that I could have been the guy, you know. Sure, Mark can make silver, Dylan Gu can make his animations, but me, I was going to be the guy who saves RWBY, you know. You know how silly that sounds now, but back then that was sort of what I believed, you know. And people were on board with that, you know. We all hoped that RWBY would be saved in some way, you know, saved, salvaged, whatever. That's why, you know, RWBY rewrite videos so popular, because we were hoping, we just couldn't move on from the fact that Monty's death just changed everything. We wanted a fix to it. We wanted to pretend to find someone that could just make it in a way that it was perfect in our heads. And now I realize that's an impossible thing to ask from someone that, from anyone who wasn't Monty, really. And that's the reality of it, that I couldn't really cope with until I started making my own work and I started seeing what that meant. And in the end, could I really have said that I've done good by him, that I've honored him, having done everything I've tried to, pretending that I could save his last work? It was an ignorant thing to believe, but it obviously overpowered me. make that first video, to do all the stuff I've been doing for the past 6 months. And it obviously, it was a message that resonated with a lot of people as well. But I'm not Monty, and I can never be him, and no one will. But we know his creative passion lives on in his work, and the works of those inspired by him, even if it's not RWBY. And as disheartening as it is to acknowledge it, I have to say it, Monty's path, it ended with RWBY. It was a bright flame that was put out too soon. But before it did, it ignited a spark in everyone that it touched. In me, in Mark, in Dylan Gu, in Dishwasher, everyone. So do we try to take that spark, to go back to that flame that was put out, to try desperately, to try to make it burn again? You know, that flame in RWBY and what Monty did, it died. And we tried to revive it with our own creative passion. But do we do that with that sense of loss, that sense of what could have been? You know, that's what I thought I wanted to do. But the more I tried to, the more it felt incompatible with what the creative passion actually wants. The more my own creative spark wanted to light its own way, to burn brightly on its own path, the more incompatible it felt with me trying to make something that conformed to what I think Monty would have wanted. It clashed with each other. And every step I've taken to try to pull my creativity back, to make it conform to RWBY, to what Monty would have wanted, or what I thought Monty would have wanted, it held myself back, and it held others back. And 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have wanted this for the project. For all the audience I built up, for all the hopes that I stoked, I didn't want that. For all the people invested in this for RWBY and RWBY alone. But I had to take the plunge. I had to do something to prove everything that I've said for the past months. I had to have something to show for it. But I had to realize that, and I had to accept that maybe I couldn't do it with RWBY. And it sucks to acknowledge that. It really does. And I'm sorry that I've disappointed a lot of you by telling this. And by disappointing myself that, that I had to accept that maybe it just can't be done. I wanted with all my heart to be able to do it. But only Monty could have done it. And Monty's no longer here. And even Monty wasn't perfect. A lot of RWBY's mistakes were his own mistakes as well. But, no work is perfect. We loved it all the same. But we can't pretend to be him anymore. But this may be the only way for us to move forward as a fan base. Especially that part of the fan base that is trying to cling to that ideal, where we want to make something that honors Monty. We just want to feel that spark again, that we used to feel with RWBY. That I had to accept that maybe taking that fire and making your own thing was the way to move forward. Which was something I heard before but didn't want to believe. But now that I actually am doing it, I'm slowly believing it. And I hope that you listening to this start to believe it as well. Although your journey will most likely be very different from mine and from the rest of my server and everyone involved in the project. To have to acknowledge that we had to drop all these very powerful emotions, these sentimental emotions about loss, about what could have been, about RWBY's potential, about what Monty could have made. is the dissatisfaction with how it is. To just drop that and just acknowledge, to take the essence of what really Monty wanted the whole time, was to just, to me at least, in my opinion, the drive to create, something that you yourself can be proud of, to make something that outlives yourself, like what Monty did, to leave a positive impact on the world that outlives you, that transcends your mortal life. That's what he did. And I think more than trying to fix RWBY, that's what he would have wanted us to do as well. I want to be able to say that instead of I fixed RWBY, it has changed. I think I want to say, Monty, your story and your passion, it changed my life. But now it's my turn to try to do the same for someone else now, for the world. That's what I believe now. So, hearing this, in conclusion, if you don't agree with it, if you still feel that, RWBY, there's still something that you can do about it. I'm not saying that you should give up or whatever, that there's nothing you can do to fix it or whatever you think, but more like, I learned to give that up in the sense that just enjoy whatever I can about RWBY, and to enjoy what Monty already made, and use that to drive me, instead of letting myself be driven by the cynicism, by all the jadedness. The reason why the fandom is so divided is because of Monty's death. The reason the fandom is so divided is mainly because of people who are fine with the way things are, and people who are not, for valid reasons on both ends. But I decided that I was done with all of that, with all the pettiness, with all the conflict. It was just so unnecessary, and this is not the way that I wanted to see the fandom anymore, or to see what Monty has built, rather. I want to remember what Monty has built as a source of inspiration, not a source of conflict, not as a way to get back at Rooster Teeth or any of that petty stuff. I just want to make something that I'm passionate about, to carry that passion that Monty had. That's what I want to do. Just, screw all the drama, screw all the shipping wars or whatever wars, the rewrite wars, all the reboots. Let's just make something that we can be proud of, right? But of course, if you're still attached to the whole RWBY thing and what I had planned to make, feel free to go on your own path, whatever you want to do. If that basically kills it for you, you're no longer interested, I completely understand. There's no way I can possibly blame you for the way you feel, because the way you feel about, we can do something about RWBY, because that's exactly what I felt. And it's had to be a journey that I had to reach myself. So I can't blame you. But this is the decision I've made. But if you're still interested in what I have to do, and what I want to do, or if you agree with what I'm saying, then I can only welcome you to take this dive with me again. So I'm sorry for the past 6 months. I basically have nothing to show. But it's been a wild ride of trying to really understand why I'm doing this. And that's just who I am. I don't really do things unless I really understand why I'm doing it. I have no motivation if that's not the case. So for me, I'm willing to take that risk, to take that chance, to risk this channel, all the audience that I built up, that I am probably going to let down, that I'm probably going to disappoint. If it means, doing what I now believe is right, even though I used to believe a different thing, I have to do it. I can't say no to what my heart really feels. So that's it in that sense. So basically, after all that, and in the description, you'll find the proposals for the different original ideas made by different contributors. Vote for them, grade them from, let's say, grade from 1 to 5. You vote on 5 for the one you're most interested in, as in, like, you know, this is what we should work on next, and 1 being, you know, I'm not so hard about it. Choose a favorite. You can have 2 if you really can't decide. Really, just have 1. Everyone on the team made something. I made something. I had my finger in a few pies. I contributed to a few of them, but we decided to not say who made what, you know, to keep things fair. There'll be a list of who in general contributed, but we don't want it to be too biased based on whether I made it or not. We just see if the best idea wins, right? The one that best captures what we wanted to do with RWBY Cherish, but original. So I hope you vote. I hope you understand my position. More importantly, the vote is just, you know, the vote. But I hope you really understand the direction that I'm taking with this channel and the project, and why I feel that way, and why I feel this way about RWBY and Monty in general. It's not really that I've given up. It's not that I've given up, but it's just that my priorities have changed from that sense of wanting to vindicate RWBY to more like, you know, Monty, he inspired me. He did a great thing. I just have to move forward and carry that forward and inspire someone else now, even if it has to be with my own work, which I think in the end is how it should be. And it's something that, you know, we can try to build together, because you've all have been with me on this journey. I'm afraid it's been a very anticlimactic journey. I'm sorry to say that, but it's the conclusion I've reached, and I hope if any of you are still on board, that you join me. I hope to update this more frequently now that we've calibrated to this direction, not just on Discord, but more importantly on YouTube, because that's where, you know, that's where it counts, right? The public viewing. So read that document that I've attached in the description. There's, you know, a FAQ there for some questions that are probably racing through your head right now. You can go to the description. There's a doc there explaining a lot of different things, and there's the voting poll there where you can vote for the idea you want. Obviously I had to make this video, so it took a little bit later, but we have until the 31st of December, which is very soon, but should be enough time for a lot of you. I'm sure, I know a lot of you are busy. You can't watch it and vote in such short notice. I'm sorry to tell you that. I'm sorry, but you know, we hope to do it, to have the final proposal decided by the 31st, 9 p.m. UTC, because we want to start the new year with a fresh start, you know, 2020, with full understanding of why we want to do this and how we want to honor Monty. I want to start the year that way. So, happy holidays. Have a great year. Or rather, I hope that we all have a great year moving forward. Thanks, and I'll see you around.